Hi, welcome to Off Script. I'm Zach Lewis.
And I'm Dr. Draper.
Today on the show, we're taking a look at Twisters. It's out. Yes, the sequel to the 1996 cult classic is here, starring Glenn Powell, Daisy Edgar-Jones, and that Minari director, Lee Isaac Chung. Is it worth your time? Is it going to make $1 billion? We'll get to it when we talk about a review shortly. We're also going to take a look at The Beekeeper. Yeah, David Ayer's last movie. Remember the director who did Fury with Brad Pitt and Suicide Squad? Not the Suicide Squad, which is the one you're probably thinking of. The one before that with weird Joker Jared Leto. He did that movie, and he also did The Beekeeper earlier this year. We watched it. We're going to tell you if it's so bad it's good cinema. We're going to talk about 4K DVDs and Blu-rays and physical media, because a lot of stores like Target say it's going away, but there's some movie heads that think it might be coming back. At least over in the UK, they got some big numbers, and I just want to have a quick conversation about it. And before we get to all of that, we need to talk about the news. Our first story this week, Warner Brothers Discovery is thinking about splitting up. What's this, Andy? They just got together. This is the merger of the century, right? Like, what do you mean they're splitting up? What's happening?
If I had a dime for every time Warner Brothers was sold to someone else.
I know.
Yes, it's been previously owned. It was previously owned by AT&T before being sold to Discovery and becoming Warner Brothers Discovery. It looks. I'm not sure what this language means, because it said they're possibly looking to break off Warner Brothers, basically the streaming services and the studio films, which is Warner Brothers. But I don't know if that means exactly sell it off or just split into two different companies. They're trying to save WBD as well as they can. David Zaslav, the butcher of entertainment, is mulling different options, from selling off assets to some sort of merger to some sort of they were trying to do a streaming bundle of some point that never happened yet. The stock has tanked. It's dropped almost 50% in the last year, and so people aren't happy. And it's his job to try and make this thing profitable. And the most expensive part is the streaming service and the film studios.
David Zaslav, butcher of entertainment, is great. It's got a real Jordan Belfort, Wolf of Wall Street vibe to it. I like it. We should put that on a t-shirt. Yeah, since he's been running Warner Brothers Discovery, there have been a ton of cuts and layoffs in an effort to pay down debt. It was a huge financial move to make this merger late last year. We covered it on the show. You can go back and check our episodes. But the long and short of it is they might be too big. The tent might be too big. And now Warner Brothers Discovery has to figure out, wait a second, where's the money going? Where's it coming from? How are we going to pay for stuff? And most importantly, maybe we should, split up a little bit. Move HBO over here. Maybe change the name of it or something, or move Max back, or move Discovery content to a different thing. Whatever it is, if I didn't know any better, Andy, I'd say 35,000 foot view here. This might have been a clunky merger. Maybe they jumped in with both feet a little too early. Huh? Maybe they should have parted it out or something. I don't know.
Yeah, it was from the beginning. Again, Discovery does more reality TV kind of content. Warner Brothers and HBO and all that is known for prestigious TV and film, and it's been difficult making it work. It's also very expensive to do streaming. There's also a ton of debt in this merger, to the tune of about $40 billion, as opposed to the Paramount merger, which just happened. They had about $15 billion, so talking a lot of numbers, but much less debt, which makes it much more attractive. No one wants to buy this. No one wants to, or if they're going to buy it, they're going to buy it on the cheap because it has so much debt. So who knows where Warner Brothers is going to end up this time around.
Keep it here on Off Script for more. If you're looking for prestige television, of course you can go to HBO. But if you're looking for prestige film, there's only one place to get it, and that's at Netflix with Zack Snyder's Rebel Moon director's cut. We have a trailer! Hooray! Before anybody thinks we're standing Zack Snyder, no, we're not. We not big Rebel Moon fans here on Off Script. And I want to say for sure, I think Andy and I are going to speak for what everybody else has been saying on the timeline this weekend since this trailer dropped. Why is Zack Snyder dropping a director's cut of his own movie? Isn't that what making movies is? Isn't the first cut your cut? Or is this just a marketing gimmick? Is this just a shill, or is there something great here? Andy, what do you think?
This could have been a death of cinema segment, because this is the death of film via content, as much entertainment has become to be known as content. And one of the content strategies, no matter what field it in, is to get as much as you can out of a piece of content. For instance, this podcast, we chop up into YouTube clips into shorter TikTok clips, that sort of thing. We get a lot out of the product, and that's basically what's happening here. Zack Snyder gave us 2 movies in December and April, and now he's turned around and said, "Hey, here's another hour on each one, and so now you get 2 more movies." And so he's just, it's like Taylor Swift making 30 editions of her album, just to kind of sell a few more and say, look, there's slightly new stuff. But he said there's supposed to be like an hour more content in this, and it's supposed to be rated hard R, more sex, gore, violence, all that stuff. So it's kind of silly. I guess someone might watch it.
I haven't heard anybody compare him to Taylor Swift, but that's actually a really apt comparison because Snyder has a bit of this director's cut buzz due to, of course, the Justice League, right? Like his DC property, the culmination of all of his work in DC, making Man of Steel, Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice. Like Justice League comes out, he leaves the project for wildly tragic and unfortunate reasons. It gets finished up by Avengers director Joss Whedon, that's it. And then later he comes back after big fan outcry and support and releases a director's cut of the movie. We actually covered it on the show. And for what it's worth, I do think the Justice League director's cut is better than the original cut. But when it comes to Zack Snyder's Rebel Moon, this is a whole different ball of wax. Netflix gave him his own deal. You can make whatever you want. We're going to give you an insane budget. And it was a huge L, by the way. It didn't do that good. Both those parts have suffered. And yes, the director's cut is marketing and mashing it into new, different content that'll be trending on Netflix for a week when each part comes out, I suppose. Or if they both come out at the same time now, I think. August 2nd. Yes, Chapter 1 and Chapter 2 coming out. But like one thing's for sure, I don't put a lot of stock into these films being radically better, right? Like he's the auteur in the original cut and the director's cut. It's not like he has a studio pushing against him. What are we getting here? A remix? Like I'm not impressed. I think the Zack Snyder shine is wearing off a little.
He talks about like, I was able to do a director's cut, which no one ever really wants, and I'm like, yeah, for good reason, because like people, they want the cut that's going in theaters, and they don't want you to keep messing with it. And he says in here that they even film scenes that were just going to be for the director's cut, and it's just like, what are we doing here? Usually a director's cut is like something that was longer because it was just cut for time, basically, but it's not something that's like drastically different or drastically is going to change the rating of something.
Right. Like on its face, a director's cut should be, in the digital age, like just a different Premiere file that you exported the movie on, right? Where you just moved some scenes around and changed up a bit of the editing, maybe added some music, took some stuff out. Back in the day, much more challenging. We were just having a conversation over the weekend because you got the Blade Runner 4K, and we were talking about what cut was on that versus what you saw
One
originally
of the
in
7
theaters.
cuts.
It's crazy. Yeah. Like, and while I'd still rather see that version now because it's in 4K and looks great, like that was at least a little more complicated. They were working with real film, for God's sake. Like they had to physically get in there and chop stuff up. Like just slapping the director's cut title on it and moving some things around, like doesn't move the needle for me. Now, if I do go back and watch Rebel Moon, probably won't. But if I were, just say, if I get curious, maybe this director's cut comes out in its heat. Do I watch this version? Do I watch the original? Where are we at? I don't know. Andy, thoughts? I guess you'd probably watch a director's cut if you had the means. That would just be the definitive.
Is it a director's cut of both films or just the first film? Because there's 2 parts of this. This is the other thing. The director's cuts have different names. It's Rebel Moon.
Oh, you're right.
Different name. Rebel Moon Part 2. Different subtitle.
Also R-rated, I think. I'm not sure if the original was.
No.
Yeah. Okay. Look, we'll get down to more what Zack Snyder's got going on next week. We got to move along. The point is, this is all bogus. That's what I think. I'm not too invested in it. What I am invested in is the performance of Twisters at the box office this weekend. Insane domestic opening. Andy, tell the people, how much money did this movie make?
In a huge surprise, Twisters made $80 million domestically, 127 globally. This was only projected to make in like the $40 to $50 million range, so it blew those projections out of the water. It's another big hit for the summer, which was really struggling at the beginning. It's a 4-quadrant disaster film. Take your mom, take your dad, take the kids. Everyone's going to see Twisters. There's some nostalgia wrapped into the property, of course, but a big win for director Lee Isaac Chung, who previously did Minari, a small Oscar-winning private film about a Korean immigrant family, and now turns around and he does this big budget Hollywood disaster movie. So big surprise. Another big surprise is also Longlegs continues to have long legs at the box office with
Yes,
a
that's a good
40
one. I like that. That's a good one. I'll take. Oh,
with
yeah,
a
that's good.
41% drop, and just crossed the $45 million mark. The biggest, most successful film for Neon, before Hereditary, I think, was the previous winner for them. So really big surprise. And the other ones, Minions 2 came in second, Inside Out 2 came in third. So those are sitting at the box office, and so it's been another really good weekend.
Inside Out 2 is on its way to being the highest grossing animated feature of all time, which is insane. I think it's like number 3 right now. Like it just continues to climb. I'm sure Disney will probably tip it over. Like at some point you just want the name, right? Like give it a couple summer re-releases or something. Maybe keep it in theaters for another 30 days. Like I bet they could get it. They could probably get to the top. But meanwhile, Hollywood, I would presume, is going to learn all the wrong lessons from the biggest natural disaster movie opening ever, right? So I was just asking Andy last night, real quick on the pod, just throw a couple back and forth. What other disaster movies do you think will be remade following the success of Twisters here as it continues to barrel through the box office? What else are we getting? You mentioned Volcano last night and Deep Impact, both of which I think are solid.
Yeah, I think they're going to mine these 90s properties. The disaster film was very strong at that point. We had competing volcano films in Volcano and I forget the name of this, Dante's Peak, and competing asteroid disaster films, Deep Impact and Armageddon, of course. We haven't had an earthquake movie in a while or an asteroid movie, but disaster films, we haven't really had one in a long time. Things like A Quiet Place Part all of them kind of fill that void a little bit, but I think they're going to be looking back at those older properties and seeing what worked and what we can do now with modern technology.
It's a good point. Quiet Place Day One is functionally a disaster film. I did hear a rumor about Backdraft getting remade. Not quite a disaster movie. Big Fire. Come on. That'd be great. Throw Glenn Powell in a fire suit. He'll do it. Like, look at him. Yeah, anything could happen. One more thing before we move on, and we don't really have a proper article for this, but just some speculation coming into this next weekend. Boy, it seems like Deadpool Wolverine's going to make a lot of money. It seems like it's going to make a lot of money. I was reading projections like $360 million opening weekend, which would be absolutely insane. Those like classic Marvel Prime numbers, right? That's like when Marvel was hitting big, they were hitting that kind of opening. Do you see that happening, Andy? And what are we looking at here? Are we about to get in an avalanche of Marvel?
Well, I think it's going to be super successful. And I was looking at tickets, and I was really surprised to see the IMAX showings had 7 a.m. showings, 9 a.m. showings, 1:30 a.m. showings. Like, they're packing in extra IMAX showings because it's selling out. So I think it is going to be huge. I don't think it's going to exactly rejuvenate Marvel, because one of the things that made Marvel so successful was just the speed of production, that they were cranking out 3-4 movies a year. And because of the Disney Plus demands now, we're never going to get back to that level of production. We're going to get maybe 2 good Marvel movies a year. And people, I think it's going to rejuvenate like the superhero film, but it takes a long time to make movies, and you're not making 3 of these a year like you used to.
Yeah, and that's good strategy, I think. Bob Iger, Disney CEO, has talked about wanting to dial things back, make more quality, not quantity. Hopefully, Deadpool v. Wolverine is a good, strong step into that. We'll be catching it next week. So if you want to hear our review for that, just, subscribe to Off Script or come back next Tuesday or whatever you do. We'll be here for you, covering it. So with that, we got to move into the movies. We got a big show this week, and nothing is bigger than, of course, the biggest disaster film ever to come out in theater. Probably not the biggest, but anyway, a really big one, and I'm excited to talk about it. Andy's going to be taking the summary on this. So Andy, please take it away.
Twisters. This is, of course, the spiritual sequel, kind of / remake / reboot of 1996's Twister. We find ourselves 28 years later, where we meet Daisy Edgar-Jones as Kate, a Oklahoma-based tornado chaser who is like in the first film, suffered a storm-related tragedy, leaves the field, goes to New York to work behind a weather desk where it's nice and safe. She eventually gets called back to Oklahoma by Anthony Ramos's hobby, who says, "Hey, we got this new investor and this great technology to help track storms and give people warning, but we got to do it a little bit differently. You remember Dorothy from the first film? Well, we got this new thing, and we got to kind of do a little bit different." And they're actually like the corporate sleaze, that they have sleek vehicles and matching uniforms. Enter Glenn Powell as Tyler Owens, a tornado wrangler with a YouTube following. He's a YouTuber, and he's got this ragtag crew that has all these cameras and drones, and they have a posse of people following them around, and they're kind of wild and erratic, and they're the de facto competition. And so we have these two forces. We have man versus nature, man versus man, and then of course the twisters themselves. We got to get out there, we got to get this equipment in there, and then we got to avoid danger, and also fight some inner demons as well, not unlike the first film. So that's our setup. Zach, what'd you think?
So we covered 1996 Twister just last week on the pod. I'm sure we got a link somewhere for people who want to check that out. But I wanted to see, stepping into Twisters, obviously this being a nostalgia property, coming back to it, what's changed? What's different? How has the world changed since 1996 when Twister came out, right? Like, is the weather bigger? Are the Twisters badder? Obviously, I think Glenn Powell's going to be strong. Daisy Edgar-Jones looks great. Really, if you start to look at the cast, you begin to see, almost like OG Twister, a who's who of all kinds of talent in Hollywood, which makes it a fun watch, especially if you're familiar with a lot of their work. Like Katie O'Brien appears in this movie. David Corenswet is in this film. I didn't even know he was in here. The next Superman is in Twisters. So it's an exciting watch. But I think watching it so close to the old one also points out a unique flaw in the presentation of Twisters. And that is, it's just like the old movie. They just move some parts around and they're just putting the same pizza back out under the hot plate. You know what I mean? Like, that's not a real phrase, but it just feels real samey. And while it's very big and it's very spectacle, and I get why people are comparing it to Top Gun Maverick, it is putting butts in seats, it is making money. It's a little maybe it's a little shallow, and I don't know if spectacle is enough to carry it to anything more than just that, a summer spectacle, which is clearly making a killing. So I'm excited to talk about it. Where do you want to jump in?
Well, I want to kind of talk about how the original Twister has been recently described. We both saw this on Twitter as a 5-star, 3-star movie. Like, it's not an Oscar-winning great film, but it's a brilliant, like, disaster kind of comedy / rom-com film. It just works so well. The tornado stuff, the relationships with our characters, our bad guys, our good guys. It's just classic Hollywood filmmaking, and it just works so well. And nothing about this movie, the new one, really works. And it should, because we have big effects, we have a big budget, we got stars. Glenn Powell and Daisy Edgar-Jones are doing really good work with what they have. But the script is weak. It is so weak, and it's following a lot of the same beats. Of course, we have a character that's got suffers a tragic incident, has some PTSD from it, and they got to work together with kind of their competition, and it follows all these beats, but it just does not work. You do not care about the conflict or the characters the way you did in the first one, and that's really the biggest problem. But there are things that do work that we can get into. I think it's really well made and well acted, and but it's weak in a lot of ways, surprisingly.
Yeah, I'm going to come out on the other side. I think there is stuff that works for sure. And I want to highlight that, because while I do agree, I think the script is functionally weak. It's just, God, it's so much like the old one. I want to talk about the stuff that I like. All right. And number one, that's going to be our setting. Oklahoma never looked so good. And Lee Isaac Chung, who formerly directed Minari, has a ton of experience shooting farmlands. And while it's funny that, like, the twisters in this movie would blow right through the farm in Minari, like, it's worth mentioning that there's, like, a real sincerity to capturing, like, the green of these fields, and most importantly, like, the threat of the skies. Like, seeing our characters, like, presented up against what they're facing, like the force of nature, it can be genuinely seat rattling, especially if your theater's loud enough. Like, we get drone shots, helicopter coverage, we get like shots right on cars, we get shots of people out by themselves running, trying to escape stuff, like big kinetic action in the way this movie is shot. And I think you feel it on the biggest screen you can see it on. This especially is extended to Tyler Owens, Glenn Powell's character's work on YouTube. Him and his team are like filming a bunch of stuff, and you get a lot of like GoPro footage. You get like a shot mounted to like the windshield wiper in the car. Like, you get a bunch of really creative stuff just because they have this framework in there, and that's a good time. But it also presents like a lot of characters that have a lot of kind of conflicting interests, or just get bumped off like for the last like third of the movie because they don't really have anything to do. That's part of that complicated script we were talking about. But I think the setting and like the look of this movie are real solid. And of course, I think a good segue into cast, Glenn Powell, who is a movie star.
Who could do no wrong at this
who
point.
cannot miss? Even in Hitman, he was the best part. It's amazing. It's crazy.
Yeah, I think this movie does look very good. The way it's shot, a lot of the practical effects and sets, like they got all these cars that are done up with all this like radar and cameras, and all that stuff is very tactile and really puts you in the movie the way the original did, because their cars were all decked out with storm equipment. So we have that, and we have a lot of driving scenes. It actually reminded me a little bit of Fury Road or Mad Max, because you have competing groups of cars chasing stuff. There's a lot of driving in the movie. That stuff works really, really well and is a lot of fun. And a lot of the, when the storms show up, a lot of the stuff, wind blowing everywhere, things getting blown over. It starts to get a little video gamey though, because, in 96, it was incredible because you'd never seen anything like that. Now effects are so good, it's not really that much of a surprise that you create a whole tornado and destruction, and it just begins to look a little bit too fake, but it melts together good enough.
Yeah, that's one of the other things I think that kind of hurts this movie is like shattering the illusion when you're not quite convinced. And a lot of the tornadoes look rad, especially there's this one, you can see it in the trailer footage we're running. There's this like fire tornado that spins up when a twister hits like this oil refinery or something. And that looks like a couple of those shots look like they fell right out of Fury Road. Like, it looks just like that big sandstorm at the beginning, big red like explosions. That stuff looks great. But you're also watching your fourth tornado of the film, and it's like, okay, I feel like I've seen this song and dance before. We run towards tornado, bad things happen, we run away from tornado. 96 Twister does it too, and they have 4 tornadoes in the original Twister. This one dials it up, and also dials up the danger, which is notable. I was surprised watching 96 Twister how much of the cast survives that movie. I figured it was going to be like a slasher film. They were just going to be cutting down the whole time. I kept waiting for Philip Seymour Hoffman to get sucked into the suck zone, but it never happened. And in this movie, you actually get a bit more satisfaction that way. It is notably deadlier, and that's good. I was watching this movie and there were like families in there. There was a kid a couple seats down from me. I was like, he's gonna be rattled by a couple of these, man. There's not many, but they're effective. It's people crying for help. Don't let it get me, which I like could not stop laughing at in the theater. Like, that all can be fun. It can be exciting.
Tornado.
Like that. It gives it like a real sense of energy. Like, I felt like when I was watching it, like, not only was my theater crowded for a midday, people were excited in there, man. Like, a couple claps, like people getting going, like, and that's why I want to talk about that kind of Top Gun Maverick comparison towards the end of this.
Yeah, we have some of the things that don't really work are just some of our plot elements that come to fruition. Daisy Edgar-Jones and Glenn Powell have this enemies to lovers storyline where they're the competition, but then they have some conversations. And they're like, "Oh, you're not so bad yourself, kid," and they end up rescuing each other. And Daisy Edgar-Jones uses the Force to read tornadoes, like Bill Paxton did in the first one. Their romance is, like, they're both charismatic, but the romance isn't super convincing. I think it probably works for some people. I think one of the things that doesn't work is there's some other plot lines of that the investor they're working for may not have the most kind of altruistic motives. There might be some other. something else going on, and it's like the most undercooked plot. And there's a part where they're like, oh, we got to go get the equipment, it got blown away, and Daisy Edgar-Jones is like, no, we got to go back to this town and help people. And I'm like, what are you gonna do? You guys you gotta hand out water, you gotta rebuild a house, like it's already been devastated. Like there's a whole lot of like, no, we got to go help the people. And I'm like, you literally have nothing to offer them.
Yeah. Additionally, like one of the kind of major conflicts in the film is like not outlined all that good. I realized like in one of like kind of the turn from the second act to the third act, a couple of characters are having this big confrontation. They're fighting about this landowner out in Oklahoma and this guy who's hired this team and what their goals are and how they don't really understand that and why they're having this conflict. And I was sitting there watching, I was like, the kids in this theater are not going to get any of this. And maybe they're not there for that. That's fine. But I don't recall 96 Twister ever having that problem. Additionally, I've seen a lot of people talking about Daisy Edgar-Jones's performance. I'm going to come out in defense of Daisy Edgar-Jones, all right? Here's the thing. I think her character is stunted in a way that makes her a dull watch for too much of this movie, right?
This
like,
is true.
Bill Paxton in the original film, he has walked back from being a storm chaser. He's been a meteorologist. He has knocked off that ivory tower in his opening scene. People are inviting him. Welcome back, Bill. I'm not back. Like he immediately starts to get that energy. Yeah, that energy and vibe back to go chase again. And then that's what happens over the course of the movie. Like we see him come out of that. We see that like flare of excitement in his eyes. Daisy Edgar-Jones, however, is stunted from the opening of the film. She starts exciting. She falls back into herself. She moves back to New York. I'm not going to chase storms anymore. That's her for like the next 90 minutes of the feature. And like that is a bit of a drag. And that's not Daisy Edgar-Jones's fault. If anything, she plays that role well. She does not want to be out there. It is hazardous. She's away from it. She's traumatized by it even. But it makes it a tough watch. And it bums me out that people are dogging on her performance because I think she did a great job. Like, I think she's great in this movie. She's no complaints about Daisy Edgar-Jones. Her character, however, bit of a wet blanket.
Yeah, everyone does well with what they're given. Her accent does take a bit of a walk around the southern U.S. She Daisy Edgar-Jones is British, and she's playing a southern girl from Oklahoma. And she sometimes will have this real thick southern accent, and then sometimes it just disappears. And she never sounds British, but she does like neutral American to southern and kind of in and out, in and out, in and out. But I think she's fine for, again, she's given a weak character that's not very exciting. Glenn Powell is great as Tyler Owens, this like cocky jock with a heart of gold. Anthony Ramos is good, kind of sidelined a lot of the movie, but the ragtag bunch which mirrors the original film is a lot of fun. We have Brandon Perea, who we previously had seen in Nope, playing a character called Boone, is real funny. Again, Sasha Lane.
Katie O'Brien is one of the.
Thank you, Katie O'Brien. That's the other one I was thinking of. But that, like, those guys are a lot of fun. They got a lot of good lines. I almost wish we kind of stuck with them a little bit more.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the maybe problems of the movie is it has to kind of wander off and have a bit more of a primary conflict, especially between our two romantic leads, Daisy Edgar-Jones and Glenn Powell. It leaves a lot of other characters pushed to the side. Namely, somebody I did not know was in this movie, David Corenswet, future Superman, is in this. And he's playing the evil, like, Cary Elwes kind of character. You know, he's wearing, like, a hat, and he's like, we gotta go out there and chase stars. Right, yeah, he's the science boy who's like, shut up, I can read my charts, and, like, so stupid. But I think he even reads it the right way. Like, he can watch Cary Elwes in 96 Twister and see what that character is. He's kind of this goofy caricature of what's supposed to be a bad dude. He's not ultimately that bad of a guy. And like, he plays that perfect here too. He's like shouting at Anthony Ramos. Like, great. Big fan of what he's doing in this movie. I like the cast. I want to kind of curb this to recommendations by talking about this comparison to Top Gun Maverick. People have been saying this is putting people in seats. This is like mom and dad are coming back out to the theater again, right? Like, it feels like kind of that same energy of that very American flag flying summer blockbuster, baby, right? Like, we're in Oklahoma and by God, we're going to the movies. And I think that's all well and good, but I think Top Gun Maverick had something that Twisters doesn't, and that's a real tight script, man, with a real good plot. Even though it was simple, it worked, and pretty much everybody who saw Maverick could immediately tell you what the plot of that movie is. Twisters is fine, but it does get tired, just like the 96 Twister. On their fourth tornado, you're like, boy, I'm tired of them running at and subsequently turning away from tornadoes. I do think the movie's doing well. It's probably getting a sequel. I don't know what Twister 3 looks like, but whatever it's going to be, it's going to have to evolve more than this one does, because this feels a whole lot like a remix and a lot less like something original. And I think people deserve more. I think the American public deserves a finer class of Twister. That's what I think.
I definitely wanted to say one last thing about pacing. The first hour of this, I think, is pretty fun and exciting. And then for some reason, at when we enter Act 3, after the kind of all is lost moment, it just slams on the brakes, and we get like 20 minutes of hanging out at someone's house, talking about our feelings and our trauma and all this. And I'm like, what are we doing? We've just had like 90 minutes of a like pretty exciting movie, and then it just slams on the brakes. And it was just like, God, get back in the truck, go chase another store. What are we doing here? It's a little bit too long. Could probably shave like 20 minutes off.
Yeah.
It's a full 2
also,
hours.
One other thought for me before final recommendations. I'm not a country music boy, but if I was, I would think Twisters had a pretty good soundtrack. Some people are saying it's on the nose, but again, I'm not a country music boy, and there's some toe tappers in there. I don't know. Go check it out on Spotify, or better yet, go check out Twisters in theaters. Andy, would you recommend Twisters?
I'd recommend this to kind of casual film goers, like take your mom, take your dad, take like people who don't go to movies very often, maybe see 1 or 2 a year, take the kids. It's a family affair. It is a lot of fun for the first hour. It looks really good. We have good effects. We have stars. The plot's a little thin. You don't get invested in the characters or the conflict as much as the original, which is a classic. But it's a fun summer blockbuster. It's a little bit too long. It could be cut about 15 to 20 minutes shorter. But overall, it's fun. If you're not interested in that, save it for streaming.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. It is a spectacle feature, I think. And I think that's enough. Like, go get the big popcorn. Get the big Diet Coke. Eat the gummy, hit the pen, go watch Twisters. You're going to have a great time. Like, don't overthink it. You know, like that's what Twisters is, and that's what it's supposed to be. And I think it's a fun time. Anybody looking for anything more complicated, you're going to have to wait till next summer, because there's going to be more disaster movies. Twisters is starting something here. They're going to make another. I almost guarantee they're going to make another one of these. They gotta. Like, it's too good of a winning formula to not use. I don't know what they're going to do next. Twisters on the water, Twisters 2, 3, cruise control. We're going to see. But one thing's for sure, like, there's something moving with Twisters, and I hope
Twisters
everybody
and the E is a 3.
It's got to be, right? Twisters with the 3E, or it's going to be Twisters subtitle, right? Like, I don't know. Twisters Reckoning. Yeah, it's something. Anyway, with that, we should move on to our middle segment. Typically, we watch trailers in here, upcoming things. Maybe have a conversation about the state of cinema. What do we call this, Andy?
It's time for the death of cinema. So we're going to be talking about DVD, Blu-ray sales are up. On physical media is growing. It has been declining in a lot over the last decade or so, but it's starting to have a rebound, and we're going to talk about why. Zach, what are your thoughts on why physical media is coming back?
Yeah, so I wanted to kind of preface this with just some recent buys. This is selfishly, this is me just talking about 4Ks I bought recently, but it's more than that, I promise. Hear me out. Prime Day happened. Amazon Prime Day, right? Which happens every year, and I always blow it off because never anything cool in there. But this year I happened to be looking, saw they had a movie section, thought, ooh, there's a couple 4Ks in there I want. A couple 4K UHDs, right? And I can play them now because I have an Xbox that can run 4K stuff, and I have a TV that's compatible because the price of compatible TVs has come down, and I've got the right HDMI cable, 2.1, because that's what you need. And I can watch these movies in this quality. And I think 4K is exciting because it's a little niche. It's almost like vinyl, right? It's physical. It's something you can get regardless of streaming service. You can watch your film in nearly the highest quality possible. I read that 4K is functionally like just scanning the 35 millimeter right there. Like, you're getting every bit of detail you can, short of 8K, which won't be that big of a leap. It is a graphical leap in presentation that you're unable to get on streaming service, unable to access easily, that you can have at home in a tangible, physical way. And that's exciting. So why is Target, US retailer Target, pulling 4Ks and Blu-rays from stores? And why is Best Buy killing the DVD section? And why is Walmart walking this stuff back? In the UK, they're seeing a bump. Niche stores like HMV have been saying that Blu-rays and 4Ks are actually selling more, and they're ordering more of these things, and there's a growing audience. But maybe like vinyl, those are like record stores. I don't know. I just wanted to kind of talk about it and see where we're at, because as I have started to dabble in this, I see there's a lot of people in the space that I listen and watch and follow that are collecting 4Ks. God, I see other podcasts like ours that do 4K reviews and do physical media reviews. That's not something we've ever dabbled in, but I don't know. I think it's kind of interesting, and in the age of streaming, it's a fascinating conversation to have. You picked up some 4Ks, Andy, right? I'm not alone here.
Right. Very recently on Amazon Prime Day, I took a look at this selection, and partially because the prices are pretty reasonable. No commercial, no endorsement of Amazon whatsoever. That they're not paying us. But I picked up 4 or 5 things myself. I got Dune 2 in 4K. Blade Runner, the original, 2001: A Space Odyssey, House of the Dragon, the first season, Joker as well. And I've become increasingly paranoid about physical media, because a lot of times, on more than one occasions, I've gone to watch something and it's just disappeared, and sometimes it's not available anywhere. I went to go watch, I think it was Westworld, couldn't find it anywhere. It's not on HBO, it's licensed out. This became a lot of aware after Watchmen was pulled from HBO and just not available anywhere. And I bought what I think might have been an international version of that show. So there's a paranoia in the things I like may not always be available to watch. And so I'm invested in getting physical copies of things now. But back to rebuilding my library.
Yeah, it's like a weird thing to start looking at, but it is, like I said, like almost like playing vinyl back, like uniquely niche. Like having a 4K and being able to watch it feels really cool. And you're still getting features that you used to be getting in the age of DVD, like director's commentary, behind the scenes. That stuff's all really neat to engage with. And of course, there's niche shops like Criterion Collection who will go above and beyond to include film essays and behind the scenes stuff and original art, like anything they can do to package like a feature into something that truly feels like an experience to open. While we have that, we also have streamers who, A, don't really care about getting their stuff out on physical media. Some do, but Netflix does not want Rebel Moon Director's Cut on Blu-ray. They want you on Netflix watching Rebel Cut Director's Moon. What? Good God, I think I just lost it. Rebel Cut, whatever. They want you on their platform. If you can buy the Blu-ray, you're not going to come back. This is especially harrowing for Apple, who I like, who's making big features for every Killers of the Flower Moon. They're making Argyle, right? Like, they're not all winners, but they're spending money. They gave Ridley Scott $100 million for Napoleon, and I can't buy Killers of the Flower Moon. It doesn't exist. There's no Blu-ray for it. It's a Martin Scorsese feature. It's crazy. I can't buy Napoleon. I certainly can't buy the first season of Severance, Ben Stiller's project. That second season's coming out. I better sub to Apple if I want to watch it. And that's not good. That's not film preservation. It's quite the opposite, actually. It's anti-film preservation, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not a great sign. And I think a lot of the streamers do this on purpose, because they don't want copies that they don't own floating around out there outside of what people have put on the Pirate Bay or something like that.
Yeah, it's not great. So I think like this all gives 4K and Blu-ray like a unique space to kind of emerge back out amongst collectors as, hey, if you really like The Shining, you can spend $9 to buy it on Amazon, and you'll have it in a version that is not quite peak. I know that's been a thing through all of media, that like, ooh, this is the best way to present The Shining. But honestly, I do think we might be reaching a bit of a crescendo. The jump to 4K from 4K to 8K will not be that noticeable, because those film scans aren't getting any higher quality. 4K is about as good as I think it's going to get. Maybe I'm wrong, right? I've been wrong before. I'm not going to say I'm not wrong. But for now, it is the crispest, cleanest, best possible presentation you can get for basically any film. And if you want to watch that, if you really want to check it out and get invested in it, like, why pay Netflix for like a crappy bitrate stream, right? Like, why pay $13 to Paramount Plus so you can watch it while they have it for 3 months when you could just get it and have it and, you know, and enjoy it in your own way, in the best way possible, from director to you, as intended in the cinema.
Well, also, so many streamers are now kind of forcing ads on you. That's what Amazon did. They didn't charge you more to be ad free. They just added ads to your existing tier. You know, and now you got to sit through 90 seconds of ads, which you didn't have to a year ago. And all of the streamers are adopting some sort of ad tier. So it's nice to just have your own copy at home where you don't have to mess with that.
Yeah. Well, it's funny you say that because I had to watch 90 seconds of ads to get to The Beekeeper, which is probably a good transition for us to start talking about it. So any other thoughts on 4Ks, Blu-rays? You going to keep buying them? Do you see this turning around? Because I know overall the trend is down, but I think maybe that's because, you know, the marketplace like Target and Walmart aren't carrying them as much. Maybe if they embrace that, it would grow. I don't know. I don't know if we're putting the horse before the cart or not.
I definitely want to continue to grow, have a library of physical media, the things I love, be able to watch. You know, I bought a copy of The Irishman because I didn't have Netflix for a few months, and I was like, oh, I can't actually watch this. And now I couldn't watch it ad free if I wanted to. So,
yeah. And I tell you what, I'm gonna have to borrow that Watchmen copy at some point because I know they delisted it. If only for like a little while. Maybe it was an error. I don't know. But yeah, when that went off, when that went off Max, I was bummed. That first season of Watchmen's good. Ringing endorsement. Y'all should check it out. But you should also buy 4Ks when you can, I guess. And with that, we should jump into our final film of the episode. I'm going to be taking the summary on this one. And I'm excited to talk about it because I'm not that big of a fan of So Bad It's Good cinema. I'll say that up at the top. Like, I struggle with this. They don't all hit for me. I know a lot of people out there who can throw on anything and will enjoy it. Me, I don't know. I got a bit more of a nuanced take about it. I think Andy does as well. So with that, I'm excited to talk about David Ayer's The Beekeeper. So, The Beekeeper came out earlier this year from Suicide Squad and Fury director David Ayer, starring Jason Statham as Adam Clay, a retired beekeeper, an elite secret agent, member of an organization across the world that is designed to protect the hive, right? The greater public, the greater good, the greater society. And Adam Clay is living life retired, away from the business, on a quiet farm opposite Felicia Rashad, Bill Cosby apologist, who is playing Eloise, an older lady who gets scammed in the worst possible way as a senior citizen from a bunch of scammers. These like Jordan Belfort looking crypto trading NFT bros who all work at this LED covered light show display secret bunker in an office where they're just scamming people on call centers. It's a call center. And she gets scammed and immediately does not take it well, commits a horrific act, and Adam Clay is forced to go find the perpetrators and deliver justice, courtesy of his friend. But when somebody at that operation runs the information up, runs it up to Josh Hutcherson, who is also in this film, son of a young Jeremy Irons, who is a former, I think, CIA director he plays in this movie. The two of them decide they have to take action against Adam Clay, but once they find out he's a beekeeper, once they find out that he's a member of the elite, they realize that they have to get out and make a deal, a John Wick-esque-ian, I don't know what I'm trying to say, operation to make things cool before Adam Clay stabs and kills and murders his way all the way up to the tippy top. And boy, does it go to the top in The Beekeeper. Boy, it just keeps going. So I'm excited to talk about it. Film stars Jason Statham. It is a action send up. Some say so bad it's good cinema. Andy, what did you think of The Beekeeper?
The Beekeeper is definitely one of those kind of like 80s, 90s B movies where you have this ridiculous premise that is just executed at like everyone's like a cartoon villain and he's the cartoon hero. He's like, I'm the beekeeper, I gotta protect the hive. And you know, he's got all the he literally does keep bees. Like he makes honey for the local the locals. But then we find out that the Beekeeper's also like code name, kind of like a James Bond-esque, and there's just one, and he makes everything, and even the CIA doesn't really know about him. It's kind of like every element of this story is ridiculous, because it's just like the Beekeepers, they're super assassins, even the CIA can't control them. And then you got to bring an old beekeeper out of retirement to fight the new beekeeper, and it just goes up and up and up, and levels of corruption. You got a lot of action. It's not quite as tight and as well choreographed as something like John Wick. The violence isn't kind of as fun, but it's the kind of movie you watch with friends and laugh, have a drink, be on your phone, kind of talk over. It's a lot of fun in a group. Probably not great on your own.
Yeah, that's the funny thing about The Beekeeper. And when you hear about a movie like this, it was advertised straight. It was advertised as an action vengeance thriller, a la like a Liam Neeson movie or like a John Wick kind of thing. Big yellow posters, big yellow font, The Beekeeper, right? Bees flying around. But then when you watch the trailer, you realize, okay, it's not quite what we're getting at. Watching the actual film, it is brutally obvious that this is not meant to be any kind of big action thing. So I think the marketing doesn't save it really, but that wasn't a problem performance-wise. Beekeeper cost about $40 million to make, and it made like triple that. It made like 125
it was a huge hit
or something like that. Yeah, it did great. In fact, David Ayer's working on kind of a spiritual sequel with Jason Statham. It's on IMDb. He's like a logger at some northern town, and his daughter goes missing, so he's got to go take an axe to a bunch of
it's beekeeping gun.
Right? Yeah, he's the log jam. That's what we called. I don't know. but I can't recover from log jam.
Lumberjack.
Beekeeper, yeah, right. It's something like that. Beekeeper did not start as So Bad It's Good cinema, I don't think. And like much So Bad It's Good cinema, like The Room, Tommy Wiseau project, infamous, it does not have to start with the intention of being so bad it's good. Beekeeper actually comes from writer Kurt Wimmer, who you don't know personally, but you know his movies. He wrote, let's see, Equilibrium, that's that Jedi-like movie starring Sean Bean and my guy Christian Bale. God, the Thomas Crown Affair, Ultraviolet, if you remember that movie, Law Abiding Citizen with Gerard Butler and Jamie Foxx. Point Break, the remake. He wrote the Total Recall remake. Kurt Wimmer has never written a jokey So Bad It's Good script in his life, ever. So I don't believe for a second that this started as what it turned into. Like, what this started as, at least in presentation, was an earnest attempt at an action thriller movie from the guy who wrote Equilibrium and Total Recall and Law Abiding Citizen and Point Break. What we get is a So Bad It's Good feature, even intentionally so. Like in the presentation of these like crypto bros, the way they're reading lines, the way Jason Statham's character just shows up in scenes like an SNL character, even some of the cutaways are like so awful. It's very obvious that this is what this became. But I don't know when that happened. I don't know if that happened in the editing room. I don't know if that happened at a pre-pro meeting. They all just decided, hey guys, we're not going to take this that serious. Like somehow it gets over the line, but it's also like kind of boring and dull in parts. And those are the bits you get your phone out or like get up and do your laundry. It does not manage to hold that energy for the hour 45-minute runtime. It can't. It kind of crumbles.
Yeah, when you have a movie that's thin on plot, or that the plot is just a vehicle for the action, then the action's got to be great. It's got to be over the top. The fight scenes are all a little sloppy, like they don't feel very, very real. He does do a lot of kind of gruesome kills, like he ties a guy up and then drives the truck off the bridge. One of the things that we see in the trailer, he walks into the data center and blows it up, and it's so funny because everyone just kind of sits there and lets him do it because he's the one tough guy, and he's like literally pouring gas on these rubes, and they're scared and run out, and no one really tries to stop him. When they do, he just beats them up. So like the action it's fine, like it's like TV movie level. There is a version of this that is really good where you have like a John Wick level choreographer put everything together, but we have our main antagonist that's just kind of a invincible. He's tons of plot armor. We also have a real unconvincing FBI agent chasing them down. Who is this guy? Oh, he doesn't exist. we just have a birth certificate and nothing else. And we follow them the whole movie, and they're so boring. They're supposed to be the comic relief, and they're not even that.
Not funny.
We do, yeah, we do get some inspired scenes. There's one where a counter beekeeper shows up to take him out, which is overall too soon. He defeats them in like a 30-second fight. Who I wanted to very comically called the she keeper because it was a woman.
It's funny.
So it's undercooked in all aspects, and if you have a weak script, you gotta have great action.
Yeah, and like that's somewhere like it really struggles. Like in my Twisters review, I talked about how well that movie shot. Like Lee Isaac Chung really goes to efforts to make the presentation of Twisters big and bold and dynamic. He uses the whole screen, big lenses, wide open spaces in Oklahoma, big skies, big action, big danger. Beekeeper has none of that thought put into it. It's hard to believe, honestly, this comes from the guy who directed Fury. But I think the intention was we're just going to use this budget smart and we're just going to get through it. And it's just going to be we're going to put it out in January and that's going to be the movie. Every shot is a cameraman holding a Steadicam, bit of handheld maybe, eye level, nothing fancy, no flash, no glam. They got a little bit of lights in the background to make some things look good. Big fan of light beams, David Ayer is going into frame, which is cool, right? The cutaways look awful. Like, it's just not a good looking movie, and visually it's not exciting. And when you've got a script that's already pretty low in the low parts and not very exciting in the highs, it makes it dull. And yeah, you could say it's so bad it's good cinema, but if you're on your phone for a third of it, like, is it even cinema? Are we even in that space, or have we like transcended into something so boring, so awful that you just don't care until Jason Statham's swinging on somebody? Because if you want that, go watch a Fast and Furious movie. It comes faster and better and is more exciting. Beekeeper does not do anything that's particularly exceptional in the space. Like it kind of flops in every direction.
Yeah, it gets weirdly slow in parts when we're not doing our action. Again, and our action is laughable. There's not enough danger. He beats up everyone. No one gives him any trouble because he is the beekeeper and he's like the lone person in this top secret organization that no one really knows about. He's just a little bit overpowered, and then it gets boring. And the slower parts with the detectives who are like, "Who is this guy?" Well, we found this clue. Is it equally as slow? Definitely has a lot of pacing problems.
Yeah, tonally watching it, like it reminded me a lot of Cocaine Bear, especially the Sheekeeper bit you're talking about, which is like maybe my favorite sequence of the whole movie. It's like a minute. It's so fast. There's almost no
short
dialogue. It's goofy. It's funny. Like that's the kind of tone over the top that I wish the whole movie had, and it doesn't really get there. But I do think the cast was aware of what's happening, in my opinion, because some of these reads are really outstanding. Jason Statham as Adam Clay is fun for fun's sake. Honestly, watching Jason Statham run around in this movie, I'm thinking, I wish he could get into more obscure stuff. Could we get him like in a Willem Dafoe role, where he's just kind of an old grumpy Brit standing around? Like, I don't know. Like, I feel like that would work. Josh Hutcherson is honestly fun as this like crypto trading, drug huffing, young man who thinks he owns the world and totally doesn't. Jeremy Irons as this kind of peer, Wallace Westworld, is fun for fun's sake. He's having these ridiculous calls with like the CIA director, Minnie Driver, who I didn't expect to be in this movie at all.
Yeah, I saw that too. I was like, what's Minnie Driver doing in this?
Yeah, what's Minnie Driver doing in here? Good God. And I dunked on Felicia Rashad in the open, but I do like Felicia Rashad for what it's worth. And like, while her bit is boring, like, because her character is a senior citizen who's literally getting scammed. It's like a 10-minute scene. It's rough. Once you get through that, you're like, well, it was charming. She was in here, I guess. She looked good in the trailer. So like, I think the cast knew what was up. I think Ayer knew what was up. It comes from a place of a writer who meant this earnestly. And I think it ends up being not good in either way. It's not a good action thriller, and I don't think it's a so bad it's good movie. It just ends up being real down the line, real mid.
Yeah, agreed. It definitely, it's a one-timer. It's a put it on while you're doing chores and not actually watching it, or you need something to put on in the background at a party. It's that kind of movie.
Yeah, you're next time you visit home, your parents will tell you, "Oh yeah, I watched that movie, The Beekeeper," and you'll be like, "Oh no, you watched that? Like that's what you're watching? Like, come on, you could do better than that." Like, it's fine. The Beekeeper is fine. Not a great showing from Ayer, I don't think. Like, it's weird looking at the poster. It's like from the director of Suicide Squad and Fury, and you're like, really? Like, this
How
is
far
where
he's
you're
fallen.
at? He's doing, like I said, he's doing Logjam or whatever that next movie is going to be with Jason Statham, which is just going to be a spiritual successor to this one because it worked. Remember, like for every dollar they spent on this movie, they made 3 back. So that worked pretty good. Like it's a winning formula here with The Beekeeper. But as an actual watch, like boy, it is just not all that exciting, in my opinion. Fun stuff, fun goofy stuff, but otherwise we should probably move to reviews or formal recommendations. Andy, any other thoughts on this one?
No, I'm ready.
Andy, would you recommend The Beekeeper?
I would say probably soft pass, unless you're really a diehard Jason Statham enthusiast, or you're just bored and want to put some a mindless action movie on, and while you do anything else but watch it. That's what I recommend. Some decent action. Jason Statham does what he always does, which is be the same character in every movie. His beard, he's got a bad dye job on his beard. It's way too dark. It doesn't like match the rest of his skin. There's a version of this that is really good, but you could definitely see where they cut the budget.
Yeah, Beekeeper's Abyss. Don't watch it. David Ayer, how could you? Hopefully he'll pull into something better. I think it's an intentional so bad it's good movie. I really think that somewhere along the way in editing they decided, you know what, we're gonna go for broke. We're just gonna do it, and like it wasn't marketed that way, and it doesn't work that way because it's not that so bad it's good. It's just kind of so bad it's bad. I was thinking of the YouTube thumbnail for this one. It could be like so bead to the bone, or so bad it's bead, or protect the hive. You'll help me come up with something. But if you like what we did on Off Script today, you should come back or check out what we got in other places, which I'll tell you about in just a second. Before we do that, Andy's got to tell us what we're watching next week. Andy, what's on the docket?
It's finally here. Deadpool and Wolverine, the long-awaited sequel to Deadpool 2, and is going to be somehow involved in Marvel now, the MCU. There are rumors that this next phase is actually going to be called the Mutant Saga. We're moving away from the multiverse saga, and of course, Kang and the Kang Dynasty is not happening anymore. So that's the big release, July 26th, this Friday. We got tickets. It's selling like hotcakes. It's probably going to be huge. And then we're going to see what else we're going to look for on streaming. We're going to find something. There's some options, but this is going to be the last big throw of the summer, and then it's into August.
Yeah, excited about Deadpool Wolverine. Get your tickets if you haven't got them. We'll find something else to watch. We'll fill it in. We always do. But if you like what we're watching here on Off Script, if you like our show this week, if you've enjoyed previous episodes, maybe seen us on the internet and thought, I'll check those guys out, but not stuck around, good news, now's your chance. You can just subscribe to Off Script Film Review on whatever platform you're watching or listening to us on right now. We might be on TikTok, Instagram, we post clips on Facebook, we're on Twitter. You can follow us on all the usual social media places. Big things going on in the YouTube channel. Big things. We got goals over on YouTube, and we're continuing to hit metrics. Come help us out. Come do us a solid. Come follow us on YouTube. It's great. Things are going good over there. We're on all the audio places. Love our audio listeners, even though I'm talking about you last. Next week, I'll talk about you first. You watch. I'll remember. iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, iHeartMedia, if you listen to the audio podcast. We started this show on audio. Love the audio. Always going to be here for you. And, of course, you can check out our website offscriptfilmreview.com, and you can email us correspondence directly at offscriptfilmreview, mail at offscriptfilmreview.com. From all of us at Offscript, the home of Bold Cinema, I'm Zach Lewis.
And I'm Dr. Draper.
Thanks for watching.